have Councilmember Mono and Young online? Okay, great. Welcome back. Thank you. That was a tight 5, or it was a Wharton 7. And we need like a chart. Okay, so we are our first item on. So welcome, first of all, to the City Council work session for July 8th, 2025. Our meetings are public. You're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the Council's agenda page, Zoom, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. This is a work session meeting during which there is no public comment. Please join us tonight at our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share your comments. And we, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114, 5476, by email at council.comments@slc.gov, or our 24-hour comment line 801-535-7654. Comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with all council members and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. The first item on our agenda is, starting off with a bang, mixed use, zoning consolidation, zoning text and map amendment follow-up discussion. We've got some planning division all-stars, and let's jump right in.
Okay, I'll start. So this is a follow-up briefing based off of the work session from last week and the public hearing. During the briefing last week, when discussing the potential duration of the transitional period, which would be defined as the time when the council adopts the new zoning ordinance to when it becomes effective, there would be about a 3 to 6 month time frame when applicants could come in under the existing zoning, choose to come in under the existing zoning or the new MU zoning districts. At that time, the attorney's office asked to have a few more days to review that to see if that is possible, if that is something we could do. As noted in the staff report, the attorney's office reviewed that concept and they've advised against it, stating that it would not be legal for the council to do that. So today, the attorneys are here to discuss that if the council has more questions, but there are some other options the council may consider that could potentially help address the concerns that have been raised. What's being asked of the council is, there are a few developers, property owners who have projects that they would like to get done under the existing zoning ordinance, but they would not have time to do that once this is adopted. We also have developers and property owners who would like to move immediately with the new zoning districts in place to move forward with their projects. So that's the needle you're trying to thread. One option that has been raised is the potential for development agreements with the property owners who would prefer to stay within the existing zoning ordinance. Are there any questions on that? What would happen is the developers would come to the council. It's effectively a zoning amendment. They would come to the administration, file a petition stating that they're interested in a development agreement. One of the ideas that we've heard, or one of the issues, is the potential change in the parking regulations, and so they would work with the administration to develop a development agreement that would address those parking concerns. That could also include setbacks, stuff like that as well. Any questions on that?
My question is, so for let's say a property owner that is concerned about the parking requirements, if maybe Nick, you could just talk without necessarily talking about a specific property, but let's say that they're worried about the parking requirements between the two zones. Kind of talk through some of the existing options that would still be present in other areas of the code that they could look into before even having to do a development agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. So the parking regulations include a number of alternatives to the minimum parking requirements. And so some of those, for example, are if someone's doing affordable housing, depending on the level of affordability, they start with if they're in a zone that has a minimum, they can get between a 35, I think all the way actually up to 65% of a reduction for the very low AMI types of housing. So that's option one. They can reduce that already. They also get, for example, if they're near transit, or if they're near, and transit includes not only like TRAX lines or the streetcar line, the S line, it also includes high frequency bus routes. They get an additional up to 15% reduction as well. Some of the other alternatives to parking include the ability to submit a parking study that shows a lesser requirement than what our code requires. So if they do a study and that's accepted by a combination of the planning director and the transportation director, that becomes their standard. So there are options out there. In addition, the city has adopted two different zoning incentives, one for affordable housing, one for building preservation. Both of those include some options building preservation specifically includes what's called an administrative plan development to reduce the parking requirement. That's a staff level approval. So if they have a qualifying building, which is something that basically is historic but not otherwise, even if it is listed somehow, it only has to meet certain parameters in our code, that they would qualify to utilize those incentives.
Okay. So several options. What I'm hearing you say is several options short of doing basically submitting a application for a rezone, or short of having to do a development agreement. But if none of those options work, development agreement would be an option as a last resort.
Yeah, so there's the administrative remedies, which are staff level types of things, and then there would be the legislative, which would take longer, go to the council.
Okay, great. That answers my question on that. I have another question. We got a question, public comment from a resident about, in our last formal meeting, about creating a two-tiered system of historic structures, that if you're in a historic district but you have a structure that is not designated as a historic landmark, that the setbacks don't apply to you, and so those people would be, if they want the setback, would be forced to hurry and try to get their property designated as a historic landmark. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so let's first talk about the various setbacks and upper level step backs that are in the proposed MU zone. So those apply when you are next to a less intense zone from a building height perspective. So for example, if you are in an MU5 or an MU5 property that's next to, say, an RMF 30 property, they will have an increased setback, and above a certain height, depending on the building type in the zone, would have an additional upper level step back. Those are intended to reduce the impact from that building mass on a smaller building. In historic districts, there are provisions to review new construction and major alterations, which include large additions to buildings, where the Landmarks Commission does have the authority to modify or increase setbacks, building height, et cetera, so that the historic scale of a property is appropriate based on the context of the street that it's located on.
Okay. What if we wanted to make it so that if you are in a historic district and it's a historic structure or a contributing structure, but it's not its own landmark, but we wanted the step backs or things like that to apply, what would be the way forward on that?
So in a situation like that, the best way to address that is by modifying the standards of review for new construction and major additions within the overlays. And the reason for that is because the overlays contain dozens of different zoning districts. And so not all of them are impacted by the MU zone. There's residential zones as well. There's institutional zones, public land zones, et cetera, that all are in that. And so if you wanted to do that, the most appropriate place to do it is through those standards of review, and make it something that is more specific than what we currently have as far as looking at setbacks and scale.
Okay, because I am interested in adding that requirement, and if that's something that can be done outside of the MU, and it sounds like you're saying more appropriately done outside of the MU process, to say we basically want you to treat every contributing structure in a district as if it were a historic site for purposes of setbacks and things. We would just need a text amendment for that?
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah, that's something I'm interested in, and would offer that as like a possible like legislative intent that I would like to see. I won't be able to, I'll be chairing tonight, so I won't be able to make the motion, but I can talk about that at the meeting. Thank you. Any other questions on MU? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Romano.
Are we just open to general discussion on this then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I would like to revisit the conversation we had last week about the step back. I know that I even made this comment in our last work session that the thing I was going to support, I might regret, and I kind of already do. I asked planning for a map of all the properties that were applicable zones and with streets under 90 feet. So just to remind the council members and the public, there were 3 options that planning supported, and we were kind of, I think, toggling between option 1 and 3, and we sort of settled on option 1, which was any property with a street less than 90 feet would be required to have a step back. And I asked planning for a map of that just after our discussion, and it affects quite a few properties. Notably, my district has a lot of them along like the 3rd West corridor. And so I would like us to reconsider that. And I would submit that the 3rd option that matches the step back requirement to being in the same areas that allow the additional height would be a preferred alternative to that.
Councilmember Romano, may I just confirm you're talking to implement the geographically specific setback in the Sugar House additional height area from McClellan to 13th East, 2100 South to I-80?
Yes, that's after looking at the maps and seeing how much it affects throughout the city and in places where I don't necessarily think the step back is going to be helpful, and where I would like to see more density, I think that would be a better option.
Council member, okay. Can we move on to Councilmember Young, or did you want an answer on that? Councilmember Young, go for it.
My comments related. I support that option as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can we include this this language in the motion sheet for tonight as an option for us?
Yeah, we'll update the motion sheet to reflect that.
Yeah. Can you actually restate what it is? Because I was trying to answer some questions and queue ups. So what was the proposal? Councilman Romano?
Okay, the proposal is that we revisiting the conversation last week about step backs. I believe this
yes.
is
Okay.
so that we would go with the proposed option 3, which is to do the geographic boundary. I think it's McClellan to 13th and 21st South to the freeway. That is the section that is allowed for the additional height, and that would also be the section that would require the additional step back.
Okay. Any other questions on MU? Anyone want to share any thoughts about? Yes. Where we're at on that. This is our time to have a discussion about it. So if we want to have that. Yes.
I'm still not sure where we are on the delayed implementation or implementing immediately. I know that what I stated last time sounds like it's not going to be possible, which is the 6-month overlap, allowing both to happen. Given that that's not an option, I would ask for I think the option of the 3 months is still would be my second preferred choice, where it's delayed, but we would allow properties to submit applications right now. And we would earnestly review them, have all the departments reviewing those comments so that in 3 months, when they've finished their reviews and this goes into effect, they can be issued a building permit right away. Unfortunately, I think 3 months is actually fast within our city. So I think that effectively gives the same thing that we were trying to accomplish, just with a 3-month window instead of a 6-month window, by allowing people to start the review process now and then get issued a building permit at the conclusion of that 3 month.
Councilmember Young?
So I agree with Councilmember Mono, just related to that. I think the challenge in this space is I know that with MU consolidation, like this has been a train that's coming down the track, and I want to compliment the planning team for all of the outreach that you've done related to both the walking tours, visiting the community councils, creating opportunities to participate. I think the unknown quantity was, to be quite honest, the council decision and what the timing of that decision would be, which made it difficult to be able to say, like, what are you planning for and when is this expected to take effect? But giving that 3 months, to me, that provides kind of that window of delayed implementation, so that anyone who's like, whoa, I didn't realize council was deciding on this, in July versus in August, that opportunity to be able to get their ducks in a row related to any existing plans and investments they've made in creating those plans under the current zoning, while still, opening the door related to having a clear timeline for when the new consolidation would go into effect. So those are just my thoughts. I support the request from Councilmember Mono.
I mean, I would be interested to hear more based on what Nick Norris had said about the parking requirements. My understanding is that is a significant kind of pinch point on people that might want additional time. And if there are multiple avenues that they have to potentially address that in other parts of the code, like, do you think that we still need the delayed implementation with those options?
So I guess I'll just say that although I appreciate that that's a primary concern related to one specific project, I don't think that that's representative of all the potential issues, that are out there. And we do have smaller projects that, have been working to be able to, have their projects meet the current zoning requirements, where they've invested in terms of, the architecture designs and everything like that. And I applaud the fact that we are at the point to be able to make that decision. But I don't think in the best of crystal balls that was clear to anyone who may have started this process even like a month ago. go. And that's where I think having that delayed implementation allows for some of those smaller projects to get across the finish line, to not have to go back to the starting point to be able to make that possible.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I have not, from the people that have reached out to me, the concerns I've heard really have just been about parking. So I would be more inclined to say, let's move forward. Yeah, I understand that there might be other projects that I'm not aware of, that parking won't solve that. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
No, so much questions, but this is one of those projects that we're undertaking that it is huge for our city, and it's as big as it is impactful, and in the positive. I mean, we have identified all the benefits of simplifying this code for our city, and making it so 26 become 5, and then not only that, positive impacts on how fast we can adapt to the changes we're seeing and minimize non-conforming uses and all of these other pieces to the problems that we have right now with the code that is been pieced together for so many decades. So it is also challenging because there is, there is those that want us to delay. There is those ones that want us to go fast. There is those that want us to carve out pieces of it, and it really is. It's one of those things that is challenging to please everyone. Much like we've been sort of its own theme with many of the things that we talked today. But I'm hopeful that the city has done an incredible amount of outreach to get feedback, to incorporate some of the feedback and the changes that we have seen in the last few months to this new proposed ordinance. And no law is perfect, and no ordinance is going to achieve and solve all the problems for every single individual in our city. But this is a very sincere attempt to solve a very complicated issue that moves forward in our city and creates this a better, more congruent uses that live together within our district. So again, I heard the concerns from many of my neighbors. I've had many meetings with the administration, with many of them in my community, with many of you to talk about those. And I believe that we have extended many of those solutions to try to mitigate any potential negative effects. So I wanted to put that on the record as we've been working on it for months.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Petro, we were just finishing up on mixed use consolidation. Do you have anything you want to add?
I hate to be the slacker who was, coming in late. I think this is the biggest update to zoning. It's so sorely needed, but it's not an on and off switch. I firmly believe in as much grace as we can give to the community as we ask them to adapt. So I am in favor of the longer transitional period. With all apologies, I promise I'll make the whole planning department dinner to apologize for any inconvenience. I hate making your jobs a little more difficult, and I have heard that. It's not that I haven't. I just think that this is such a needed update, and we need the full faith and participation of our community to trust in our decision-making, to trust in our vision. I think it's important.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, which is amendments to an ordinance for chapter 11.14, parties, gatherings, or events. And for this item, we have Michael Sander, Council Policy Analyst, Hannah Vickery, Senior City Attorney, and Bill Manzanares, Deputy Chief.
Awesome.
Okay, Michael, you're going to start us off with an intro.
Yes, we will do a quick intro.
All right, go for it.
All right, so good afternoon, Council. The administration is bringing forward this proposed ordinance today that introduces a civil enforcement tool to address unruly parties, gatherings, and events, which are defined as involving 3 or more people near a residence that result in observed law violations, disturbances, or obstruction of public right-of-ways. The primary goal of this ordinance is to protect quality of life while reducing the strain on sworn police department personnel. The proposal would authorize non-sworn members of the police department, such as the community responders, to respond to and document these incidents, which would allow sworn officers to focus on higher priority calls. If approved, the ordinance would replace the previously eliminated police service fee for parties, gatherings, or events, which was in the consolidated fee schedule. This would be replaced with the $1,000 civil fine issued to the property owner following a prior warning. This fine is set at $1,000. By holding property owners accountable rather than attempting to identify an individual host during an unruly event, the ordinance is designed to promote accountability and reduce the frequency of these large disruptive gatherings. This approach is expected to discourage such violations on private property and encourage private owners rather than the city to address tenant behavior that has a negative impact on neighborhoods. The purpose of today's briefing is to prepare the council for potential action at the August 12th formal meeting. We've included some policy questions on the bottom of page 1 to help guide the discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Turn it over to you guys. Anything you want to add? Oh, sorry. Turn your microphone
See,
on.
I knew it first time here. Easy. Thanks for having us. Really, we're just looking for some additional tools to help us with some of these unruly parties, and specifically up, around the University of Utah and some of the student parties that are happening up there. Really, the two things that we're hoping to have happen is that it's not a police officer. It doesn't take a police officer to be up there to identify and to document that the party is occurring. If we're able to get or make it to where our civilian response team is able to do that, it can free up officers. You know how busy we are, and getting officers up there is challenging. Not that we'll stop doing that, but to have a civilian response team that's able to identify those, and then make it to where we don't have to, when it's a large, extremely large party, right now we have to identify who is hosting the party, who's doing it, and it's challenging, super challenging to enforce that. And this would allow us to identify that, yeah, there is a party, that it's unruly, they're in violation, and that we're able to civilly find the owners of the buildings, and hopefully that would help us to get a kind of a handle on it, because it's gotten bad.
Okay, Councilmember Loba Chavez.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the work on this. I'm really grateful for the time we've spent on this and the work that the administration has done to help us overcome and really find this gap in the policy. I wanted to better understand how we measure mass gatherings. I know part of these discussions have been not to regulate events or outdoor events, but rather to restrict unpermitted or unlawful mass gatherings. A lot of this is formed in a party, but I think we know that there's specific behaviors outside of just like a backyard barbecue or a quinceañera or baptism or any type of events that we may see our neighbors participate in. Could you help me understand if we have a definition for mass gatherings, or how we might prevent over-regulating or creating a system where neighbors are over-inundating police calls or dispatch with, reports on individual gatherings?
Right, and really, I mean, in layman's terms, which is, I mean, that's the easy way to explain, or better. This is not a family event. This is not a family function. It's not a barbecue. We're talking about, in some of these parties, hundreds of people. We're talking about underage drinking and alcohol overdoses and things like that that are really, But to define it, So 3 or more people, again, assembled on or within 600 feet of any residential property, where a member of the police department observes one or more violations of the law. The party gathering or event disturbing the peace, health, safety, welfare of the surrounding community due to the magnitude of the crowd, noise, illegal activity, fighting, littering, public urination, defecation, or other disturbance. The party gathering or event causing the obstruction of public ways by crowds or vehicles, which we've seen all that, and we see it on a very regular basis now.
Thanks. I wonder if in this policy toolbox, because I'm understanding that we're creating a civil process, and the language that we're changing is from tenant to primary homeowner. And I'm curious if, I really like this tool. The only concern I share is that there's so many events that have more individuals than the number listed. And I wonder if there's language or within this process that can help us further define what those unlawful behaviors or how to pair it. Because I know, for example, public urination is already a crime, but it's something that, as I'm understanding, if I'm not mistaken, our officers today, one, may not have the resources to respond in a timely manner to gather evidence. Two, may have evidence, but that evidence doesn't necessarily mean that they can cite on it. Is that correct?
Correct. And the example that you gave, so the public urination, and I have worked at those part-times we put officers up there and work those shifts. If you cite somebody for public urination, which we've done, that doesn't stop the party. So it's not a fix. It is something that we enforce, and obviously we enforce all the laws that we can when we're out there trying to combat these. But you walk away with a citation that you've given them and the party is still happening.
Would it be fair to say that if I pulled a permit in East Central neighborhood where I live, and I held an event that was permitted at my home, would that be a process that is expected from neighbors to avoid potential complaints?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to wait before I keep going because if the city's permitting an event.
So we don't permit events on private property.
Private property, okay.
So there would not be a permitted house party unless it was in the street or in a park, some sort of public space.
Right. And I'm just trying to think of like homecoming weekend, University Street shuts down. They don't pull permits, but everyone knows and the neighborhood knows that the street becomes inundated, or Halloween, or any tailgate season once it kicks off, it's absolutely inundated. And I'm just trying to think of do we want to offer that as a process or a route where people could legally engage in a mass gathering? I'm just trying to understand to make sure that that's not a gap that we're missing out on.
Can I just say one thing? We were doing that. We were doing it through the school when they were doing the parties at the frat houses, but they were giving restrictions as to what they were supposed to be doing, and they didn't want to follow those. That's why they've moved to these other private houses. So, we could make a permit process. We could have we want you to have this many people, or, no alcohol or whatever, but that's what moves it to a different location.
Okay. Like I said, I like this tool. I'd love to hear the perspective of my colleagues. I think it's one that's necessary. Like I said, my only concern is neighbors that may complain because they hear rancheras being played in the background. I certainly blast my music and host people, and trying to understand what is that civil process. It costs time, and if someone can prove that they're not in violation, then certainly we potentially have opened the door where people can become evicted because the homeowner is now the individual that is responsible for the fine. So I just want to make sure that we're not opening the door to unintentionally harming people's housing capacity, but rather intentionally overcoming these nuisance issues. And I guess the secondary thought is we see increased nuisance issues all over the city. It's not just the university area, it's all over. Specifically related to the student population, though, it's very unruly. In the past 11 years that I've been in Salt Lake, we had multiple student deaths because of heightened emergencies where there were multiple reports of excess partying and unlawful behavior. And unfortunately, we didn't have response times. Is it fair to say that as part of this policy tool, we still need an increased presence of PCRT in our budget?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we need more PCRT and we need more officers, obviously, as well.
I guess that's the point I want to make here, is that every year we talk about, we just passed the budget and we brought this up. It's not included in our budget this year, overtime police officers or PCRT to respond to these events. These are critical events that are endangering the very families that are choosing to live in these neighborhoods. And I would love to figure out how else we can respond without just making up these tools and further impressing homeowners also. I think there's training and education, and this is a great tool that creates a hammer to really exemplify and show that we don't stand for this unruly and unlawful behavior, that we don't condone it, but at the same time, recognizing we're really putting these nuisance issues on the back of our police officers. And I'd just love to understand if it, is this something that civil enforcement should be really on top of, for example, and making sure that there's proper tenants in the dwellings? Is this, if it's going to be in the hands of PCRT, is this something that we should expect every year and should include in the budget?
Councilmember Petro.
I do want to amplify, I don't like harassment via civil enforcement. I think that goes for a lot of our different things. So maybe in addition to emphasizing the number, there should be some behavioral description as well. My neighbors across the street, I know there's a big event when they start setting up like the Greek festival style tent. And last time they brought in a legit mariachi band that like you could hear throughout District 1. And it was fantastic. And they observed quiet times. There's a difference between those 150 people and the one you were describing. So I think maybe some behavioral descriptions as to what is unruly, would help us, or at least me, feel comfortable with that. Does this have to be, I'm in District 1, so I don't have the university. What I do have is kids who walk the neighborhood after the release of things like Kilby Block Party, or even after the dismissal of Northwest Middle School, who aren't location bound, but could fit the description of a gathering that is becoming unruly. Is this a tool that could help when interventions are needed on things like that? For a while, we couldn't get any attention on issues after Northwest Middle was let out, and Captain Zayas at the time had to go and meet with literal homeowners and the principal to find solutions. Is this a tool that could be applied civilly to helping with those sorts of things?
Probably not this tool. This is really intended to get at party houses where property owners are consistently allowing.
So it has to be
unruly
location
behavior.
bound. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bowie.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Reading the language of the ordinance gives me a little piece as far as like the process that the department is going to follow, and I need to read all of it to get to the bottom of it. But just to simplify for us and maybe for those that are online, who is going to deploy or send the personnel, this police department personnel to an alleged unruly party?
Well, PCRT are directed under, they fall within the police department.
Okay.
But really, I mean, it would be nice to have it be beyond PCRT to be a city employee. If it was a city employee, if we had civil enforcement or anybody that worked for the city, there's challenges there because these parties happen on the weekends at night when they're not during their working hours. But yeah, if we could broaden it to a city employee that could document, hey, this is happening.
Yeah, and I like that path in general, like face value. I think that path it will allow the department to, to have more eyes on the street and more documentation. The only thing I worried, and I feel like we want to, I personally would like to have a process for that, maybe even training, for the sake of making sure that we are all working under the same standards, and that we're not necessarily picking our own neighbor that is annoying to us, right? So if we're going to go that route, which it seems to be maybe an ideal situation for the department to try to curb this behavior that we see, and the numbers showed, the numbers that you guys shown us, we've seen more of it. So I would like to see some training that we're going to implement, and in so many ways, much like they used to be done in the old times, the deputizing, right? Like you are now, these are the rules that you're going to abide. This is the process you're going to abide if you're going to do that. Not that we're deputizing them, I'm not saying that, but I just want to make sure that there is some standard. And I worry too, because are they going to interact with those in the party or not, right? Are they going to, and I want to make sure that if they are, that and sometimes many of us may be inclined to say, hey guys, stop it, and things could get out of hand. So this is why I want to make sure that there is some of that. But also for the sake of data tracking, I feel like we would like to have some sort of control of how we deploy this. So I like where this is going. I think this is, trying to answer some of the concerns that we hear from our community, and allowing the department to focus resources in the bigger issues. Not that these are not important, they are. But I would like to have a little more of a framework on how we're going to implement it, if we're going to go beyond the police department. But even within the police department, for those that are not sworn officers, I would also like to have some sort of standard and process.
Yeah, I think as far as the policy and procedures go that we would use, yeah, absolutely. We do that for everything that we do. And just to answer your other question, we would not send anybody to make contact at a front door or on the front lawn with anybody except for sworn police officers. That's not safe. So.
I had a question, just that it was probably a year ago now that we had an officer talk at one of my community council meetings about how we had made an adjustment to kind of like the party ordinance or loud parties ordinance that made it easier to enforce. And it was something about how like previously they had to like serve the citation on the owner of the home, but now they could serve it on anyone. And I just wanted to know like whether that change in relation to this, like, was that just not as effective as we hoped, or?
Yeah, the struggles that we're seeing up there is that, we're not able to identify who is hosting the party. So when we're going up, right now, if we're trying to issue a citation to the host, mm-hmm. we're not getting that cooperation. We're not able to do so.
Okay.
So it is challenging. So this would supersede that.
Right. So even that change wasn't. It sounds like obviously didn't work. So, okay. Thank you. That was my only question. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify if the council members were hoping that in this round of amendments, the definition would be expanded for the enforcement personnel, or if that would be something we ask the administration to come back with. And if we're hoping for it in this round, I wonder if it's possible from the administrative perspective or whether that would delay it, just to get all of that prepared for the council.
Councilmember Dugan and then Lopez Chavez.
I'm skeptical of expanding the enforcement beyond the police and the civilian response team. I don't think that deputizing anybody for something of this nature would go over well across the board, but I think we train our police officers, our sworn officers, we train our civilian response teams to handle this. We train our dispatchers to dispatch the appropriate response teams to these areas, and I wouldn't go beyond that. if we do need to, if the police and the administration believes we need more civilian response team members, put a budget amendment in there with justification for it, and I'm all for that. But I don't think we need to go outside that. I think we have plenty of officers and civilian response teams to do that, and if you deputize it, we're going to get ourselves in a go down the wrong route.
So just to answer, that's not our proposal. That was
Okay.
from that was your suggestion for the deputized. That's not ours.
Yes.
What I was more referencing would be the civilian response that we already have, that the city already deploys to do things like that know they know what they're doing. It's not something that we wouldn't deputize anybody and say, hey, you're going to go, look for that part.
I take the deputizing word out of this equation because I just use that one as to symbolism. Like, explain to me very quickly. Sorry, who we're talking about? We're talking about what city employees?
Well, we have the like code enforcement. We have people that that do go out and do things like that already, that go out and look at and are able to just observe and go, okay, that is a loud party, that it's a civilian employee that does, that's already employed doing that.
And right now they cannot do that because they need to call you.
Right now it takes a police officer and a police officer's report in order to take action.
And our code enforcement under this proposal will be able to create that report and gather the evidence.
Right, just documentation that would come to us, and then we would take it from there, so we wouldn't have to have an officer respond.
Okay. But you mentioned that maybe in a different scenario we could expand that. But for this proposal, we're talking about just code enforcement employees.
Under the draft, it would just be a member of the police department, so they're sworn and non-sworn. Under the
So we're talking
draft.
not only about code enforcement, but we are talking about any employee within the police department line item.
The ordinance itself says a member of the police department is the
So not code
terminology.
enforcement.
But what the police department is contemplating would be sworn and then their civilian response team
Okay.
responding to calls.
Yeah, that was just more of a maybe future down the road if it was something that we could expand to.
So the council may want to include that as a intent statement when this comes for your action, to ensure that if that is something that needs to come back to the council or that it needs to be expanded, that the conversation is open.
Chair, may I?
Yes.
Real quick, and then we can wrap up.
Councilmember
I just wanted to
Lovin-Chavez.
say that I don't think civil enforcement is needed in this process. I think very clearly they've outlined a process where PCRT and civilian police employees can respond to this. So I don't think we need to expand the scope to civil enforcement.
Councilmember Pui.
Last one. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I felt like I'm trying to understand things, but I felt like So I feel like we have some questions that we might want to get to the bottom of, and I do appreciate the sentiment because I feel like the goal here is to be able to achieve more with the resources that we have. So the sentiment I think is correct, and I do want a little more details on how, who, and training if we're going to allow someone else, even if it's a non-sworn. I'm going to try to use the correct languages instead of deputizing and whatnot. Non-sworn police department employee. And that to me will be key to be able to feel comfortable with this. So I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Petro.
Any expansion for me beyond police would require an extensive data set, something that shows me why the adequacy of the police force, especially since our code enforcement people aren't working at 2 a.m. on a Friday or a Saturday morning. So it feels like we would have to have layers. So if we ever did, that would be something I would be looking for, is concrete evidence that what we've done here isn't necessary. But for now, I'm interested in this expansion.
I just, want to end with my appreciation as well as the person who represents Greek Row. I know that some parties have expanded, but this has long been a problem in the Greek Row part of the district. So I really hope this will help. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Chair?
Yes.
Before we go on, can I take a point of personal privilege?
Yes, of course.
I have a friend, Pia Piccoli, sitting with me. Pia is a recent graduate from our schools here and will be leaving us for American University in the fall to study political science. So I thought she could figure out what she doesn't want to do or what she might be interested in by coming and hanging out with us today. So she'll be with us through the formal meeting. So thank you for allowing her to be with us.
Yep. Yay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is policies for housing program funds follow-up. So with us, we've got Tammy Hunsaker, Director of Community and Neighborhoods.
Thank you, Council Member. This is a follow-up from last week's briefing on the housing program funds policies in order to resolve a few outstanding items to prepare for adoption in August. I will briefly go through the policies, and I know you heard this last week, so I will be brief, and I know you're behind on the council schedule. If we could bring the presentation up. Next slide, please. So the first policy is the Housing Program Funds Policy, and this policy will establish budget and reporting standards for the city's housing program funds. The housing program funds are the funds that revolve within the city and fund city-operated programs, and that also fund programs external to the city that are operated by a third party. This policy will also establish the tenant and homeowner loan fund as a self-replenishing source of revenue to continue to fund the housing programs. Finally, the Housing Program Funds Policy will establish a Housing Program Funds Loan Committee. The Loan Committee will be, if approved by the council, will be charged with approving funding directly to homeowners and recommending funding allocations to landlord and property owners, with the final funding decision for those types of transaction coming back to the council. So if it's going directly to a homeowner, we felt it wasn't really appropriate with sensitive, confidential homeowner information for those transactions to go back to council. So the Housing Loan Committee will actually approve those final funding allocations. Next slide, please. The proposed budget process for allocating the funds is changing a little bit. You are familiar with the annual HUD process, where there's an application process. The CDACIP board provides a recommendation, the mayor provides a recommendation, and it comes to council for a final decision. We are proposing to actually add the Funding Our Future pot of money to that process so the council can better coordinate those two funding sources together. As it currently functions, Funding Our Future goes out through an RFP, and so it's a little bit difficult to coordinate the funding. The funds are essentially used for the same types of programs. We feel like this coordination through the application process will be especially important if there's reduced funding levels at the federal level, so the council and the administration can better target funding. And then with the creation of the tenant and homeowner loan fund, those funds would be budgeted through the mayor's recommended budget with the final funding decision in the annual budget process by council. So the tenant and homeowner loan fund will fund only internal city programs, and Funding Our Future and the HUD funds, there will be an application process and internal programs can be funded, or the funds could be dispersed to subrecipient programs like third-party programs. Next slide, please. So this chart just shows the flow of program income, with program income that is originating from funds with like federal restrictions being recaptured and then being reallocated according to those funding restrictions. And the non-restricted program income will be recaptured, drop into the newly created loan fund, and then be reallocated to the housing programs that the city operates. Next slide, please. So there are 3 programs that are being considered for adoption by the council. The first one is the home repair program. The city has operated this program for decades. I think you all know essentially what the program is. It provides essential home repairs to existing homeowners. The city provides project management services. So the way the contracting works is the city provides project management, and our funds are actually paid directly to the contractor on behalf of the homeowner. Grants can be provided to seniors and persons with a disabling condition of up to $2,500 for minor repairs, and then up to $50,000 for loans, and the loans can either be deferred or with monthly payments required depending on the AMI. And like I said, this is directly to homeowners, so the funding would be approved by the loan committee. Next slide. The Community Land Trust you are all familiar with. A distinction with the city's CLT program is that the city also provides mortgage financing with the CLT home, so that's not typical of a regular community land trust. The mortgage is a typical 30-year mortgage, but it's provided at below market interest and terms to help the affordability even more so for qualifying households. Last week, there was a question about growing. I think Councilmember Dugan brought this up, growing the Community Land Trust, and I think it's important for the council to know that not only would we need a budget allocation to go out and buy or develop the units, there's ongoing funding that's needed because the city will issue the mortgage, we receive mortgage interest and principal that would drop into the tenant and homeowner loan fund, and we would be rebudgeting that program income either for the CLT program or a different program. So I think what the council needs to know is, as homeowners appreciate equity and they're paying down on their mortgage, when they decide to sell, budget is needed for the city to pay out that shared equity portion to the homeowner. So there's an ongoing budget requirement in operating this program. So we do want to grow the CLT, but we want to find that magic balance with being able to continuously operate it and have sustainable funding.
Councilmember Petro.
Is that, I'm assuming that's if we exclusively are owning and operating it. Is there a world in which we do a public-private partnership, much like the one that we just authorized? Does that ameliorate our responsibility if we do it with a partner? Or will that continue to increase? And I don't need this answer right now, that I understand, but I would love to know, especially since this is really low-hanging community wealth building fruit and I want to keep pushing it, I'd like to know the difference between us exclusively owning the soil, operating the community land trust versus what it would look like for us with a partner, just so I'm informed as I'm advocating for things, if you don't mind.
Sure, I think we can include that as part of the FY26 legislative intent in analyzing non-core city programs.
Okay.
I think that would fit in with that analysis.
Thank you.
Sure. So the final program, if we go to the next slide.
Sure.
Councilmember Mono.
I had another question on community land trust, Tammy. I didn't understand why it would require budget from the city, because my understanding, and I might just be misunderstanding how the program works, is that the owner would be able to then sell it to another future property owner, and so that owner would then purchase the property, and so that owner would be paying the previous owner the accumulated equity. Am I not understanding that entirely right?
You are understanding that right. So there is with that sort of transaction, there would be revenue then coming back to the city. But the way the ground leases are currently structured is that typically the city repurchases the housing unit and pays out that equity to the owner, and then we resell it to a new qualified owner. And that just takes the burden of qualifying the new homeowner, doing the sales transaction off of the CLT homeowner that's selling, and places that onto the city. And typically we also, between changing hands of the housing unit, we go in and do home repairs, refresh carpet, paint, and do that sort of thing that also requires budget. But because we don't want to back the council into a corner, like if there isn't budget available to do that, the ground lease also allows the current homeowner to sell directly to a new homeowner with city approval of qualifying that new homeowner. Does that make sense? So there's two paths. The city can either rebuy or the homeowner can resell to a new qualifying owner, but we prefer to rebuy just to make the transaction easier on the homeowners and also to repair and refresh the house between changing hands.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. This outlines just some of the high-level terms of the CLT program. We did build, this hasn't been applied in practice previously, but we did build in an applicant prioritization. Typically, it's a first-come, first-served basis for the wait list, but we did build in that current Salt Lake City households will be bumped up on the wait list, or households that have previously lived in the city and have been recently displaced due to rising housing costs. So we're just prioritizing current Salt Lake City residents. And then the equity share for homeowners is 1.75% of the original sales price for each year the homeowner has owned the home, subject to an appraisal. Next slide, please. The NOAA Preservation Program is the final program that you are considering for adoption. This program has not been administered by the city previously, so it's kind of a pilot program for us. And as we discussed last time, a budget allocation was set aside by the council of, I believe, $1.2 million to seed fund this program. If you go to the next slide, it's preservation, as the name says, for naturally occurring affordable housing. Some of the terms for the program we really, since this is the first time the city is doing this type of program, we really tried to find a balance between the level of incentive and the public benefits that we're trying to extract from the property owner. So we felt like a 15-year affordability period was that sweet spot, because if we made it too long or onerous, no one would really take advantage of the program. So it's 15 years or the term of the loan, whichever is greater. It's also a combination of a grant and a loan. So there's a small grant per unit that would be provided through the funding, and the level of grant increases as the AMI decreases. So it's a larger grant portion if the property owner is targeting like 30 to 50% AMI, and a lower portion of grant for higher AMIs. Next slide, please. So as we prepare for adoption in August, there was discussion last week, and what we are working on an ongoing basis is the legislative intent, as we've discussed, to evaluate the non-statutory city services, and these programs will be wrapped up in that analysis. There was also discussion last week about doing a mid-year check-in, which we can do. The policies provide that CAN and Housing Stability will report on the programs and metrics on an annual basis, but since these policies are new and with potential fluctuations of federal funding levels, we'd be happy to come back at a mid-year checkpoint with an update. Also, with the budget last week, council members talked about right-sizing allocations to programs, and that's something we can definitely look at the mid-year check-in and at the annual check-ins. And then there was a question last week about the utilization of surplus city-owned property. Councilmember Petro brought that up, and we actually are looking at a handful of smaller lots in single-family zoning districts, and we're trying to release an RFP and get either a nonprofit development partner or another development partner on board, and potentially have those units placed into the CLT, so we can give you an update on that as that moves forward. So the two things we're really here to finalize before we move into August for adoption is last week, two potential revisions to the NOAA program were brought up. And the first one was, should an eligible use of funds be acquisition? Councilmember Mono brought up that a lot of times the risk of NOAA being redeveloped or being upgraded and then charging market rents is the sale of property. So I don't know if the council wants to take a straw poll, but should an eligible use of funds be acquisition, and then should funds be limited to or prioritized for smaller properties? Council Member Dugan brought that up last week. So right now, NOAA, even though it's targeted to smaller properties, there isn't really anything written into the policy that restricts or prioritizes smaller unit properties for the funding.
Councilmember Dugan?
So I'll take the recommendation. I'll straw poll on I think we should prioritize for smaller properties. And I don't have a number of what a property owner would be, whether they own 5 properties or less, but you could give us, is there a good line there, whether it's 3, 5, 10? I don't know what a small property owner would be considered, but I think we should prioritize for the smaller property owners instead of the larger property owners on these NOAA programs. That's my straw poll.
So your straw poll is to
That we
limit the
prioritize-
use of the funds to small property owners.
Yes, prioritize the smaller property owners than the larger, more industrial property owners.
Do you want them to be able to acquire property using that? That's one of the question, right?
There were 2 separate questions. Should acquisition be an eligible use of the funds? So right now, the eligible use of funds is really the repair and upgrade of NOAA units. So should acquisition be an eligible use of funds? And then the second question is, should we prioritize for?
Yeah, and I just went with the second one first.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a clarifying question?
Councilmember Mono, yes.
So Tammy, on your slide, it says for small properties, Councilor Dugan's mentioning quote unquote small property owners, like
number of
landlords
properties
that have a smaller portfolio.
Yes.
Are we talking about the same things, Tammy, as each other? And do you think that that is possible and legal? I know a lot of people will own multiple properties in different LLCs, so I don't know how we would ever trace back to. A lot of properties will be owned by multiple, like an LLC will be owned by multiple individual people. So I'm struggling to figure out how we would draw that line.
That is a good point, Councilmember Mono. A better way might be to focus on smaller, like properties with fewer units. Like we could come back with a recommendation when we retransmit the resolutions if the council does straw poll these changes. But I don't know, like 20 units or less, or 10 units or less. We could do an analysis of NOAA and talk with our partners in planning and see if they have any recommendations and come back to the council with a recommendation.
Yeah, I agree, because I didn't, Councilmember Mono brought up a good point, was that some LLCs have multiple owners in that LLC, and I was thinking the number of units, and I was actually thinking one owner having multiple LLCs, he's still the one owner, multiple LLCs, but he owns all of them, not fractional on different lots. So I think you brought up some good points there that I wasn't thinking. I was thinking one owner, one lot, times 5. So I would like to see some recommendations from the from the CAN on number, size of that. I am prioritizing that. So appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Councilmember Mono.
I would support Councilmember Dugan's straw poll. If we could also just add in, I just want to make sure we have the attorney's office, and I know that they always do a great job, but we'll also look at if we are saying you own too much and you can't use our program, if there's any legal implications for that. But the goal of keeping the program being targeted to small properties and smaller, like non-institutional corporate landowners, I would support. So to the extent that the straw poll is, let's ask for recommendations about how to do this, I'm supportive of it.
Yep. That's my straw poll.
Okay.
Tammy.
Did everyone understand the straw poll? Okay, 2 people did. Okay, all in favor? Councilmember Petro.
We're just looking for a recommendation. We're not actually doing anything else.
I
But a recommendation.
I think I'm okay with the concept of acquisition. I don't want us to get fixated on acquisition and dilute the ability. So
Yeah, we're not talking acquisition this time, though. We're not talking the acquisition side.
What's that?
We're not talking on the acquisition side.
Well, you're talking about who gets it, right? That should the money that is in the NOAA, should it be able to be used for acquisition? And so I just worry that we, I want to be really clear that I don't think we should be the tenants for all of the natural occurring affordable housing. I think acquisition should be a lower priority, and keeping people in their homes with ownership and the ability to generate equity, if it's feasible, should always be the first priority. Acquisition should be, even if it's us giving them a loan and then putting it as a lien on the house, or asking for right of first refusal when ownership changes. Like, I would prefer those acquisition methods over others. And so I'm fine with what you've said, as long as that's our guiding principle, right? And we're clear about that. So that's my hesitation. In
Councilmember Pui.
So this is, let me, now I'm, I thought I understood. And now it's one of those days, it seems like. When we're talking about acquisition, are we talking about the city acquiring them? Okay, so it isn't about the city acquiring them. It's about a private individual acquiring a property that it is to be maintained to be affordable.
Yeah.
And we pitching in with this program. So
in return for a deed restriction for affordability.
correct. Ultimately, to me, that matches with the ultimate goals that we want to achieve with this program. I do want to reinforce that. To me, the size is important. I mean, how many properties they have, right? Like this is important to me. Now, what that answer is, what number that is, and if it's legal or not, those are questions that are back to you. But the sentiment is correct. So I think I stand fully with your straw poll.
Yeah, and I think what I'm probably not saying is that if it's the individual, one guy, one family, wants to buy it, there's no brainer. Yes, we'll do that if they they're approved on it. It's the one that has 2 or 3 properties or 40 or 50 properties. That's where I'm saying we prioritize it. Yeah, the one family who wants to buy the house, yeah, that's separate from this portion of it.
Well, and traditional understanding, correct me if my traditional understanding of this pool of money is wrong, was that we use this to help people maintain it. And so I don't want to be in a place where we inadvertently dilute that function by focusing on this kind of tangential function. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose that focus. And that's my primary concern.
Okay, so I'm going to say that we already did the straw poll and it was unanimous.
Okay.
Now, I just time check everyone. We do need to talk about some other stuff. Yes. Yeah, so any other? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tammy. So we're going to do number 4 as a written briefing. Basically, staff just added all of the things that we straw polled to that. So if anyone has any questions on the communication budget policy manual changes, bring that up before we vote on it. Resolution, or now we're going to go to capital improvement program follow-up. And Kate is going to drive us and help us move forward a little quicker. So
great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do this again. You'll notice that your funding logs are a tad different this time. On the right, you have 2 additional columns. We created some categories for the projects, and you'll notice you have a loose page that has the projects by those categories. And there's also a new column that shows you what district they are in. The CW is citywide, or at least means that they are in more than one district. With that said, I also wanted to comment that tonight in your public hearing, with the motion that is made there, you have the option of approving 2 revisions to what was approved in the budget. That includes allotting $300,000 to lighting along the Jordan River Parkway. That was not included in the key changes document or the CIP funding log. The key changes document will need to be updated with a budget amendment, but you can improve using those funds now so that the administration can use those funds. Second item was that the second tranche of Park Go bonds, the debt service was included, and when those, since it hasn't been approved yet, that second tranche, we have removed the debt service. Well, we need to remove the debt service from it. So those are two items that you will be potentially approving tonight with the motion after your public hearing. Questions? Great. Okay, so we got to project number 16 is where we can start. I have a suggestion that if a project didn't receive funding, unless you have particular interest in discussing it, that we perhaps pass. If that's not agreeable to you, we can totally look at them all, but due to the time constraint, thought that that would be a good option. So project number 16 is the Streets Overlay 2026. I'll go ahead and leave it to you for any questions. We got a thumbs up. Are we happy?
Happy.
Okay. I'm going to go pretty quick. Interrupt me if you would like to. Project number 17 is the Jordan Park Skate Park expansion. This was a constituent application, and it's for $90,000. And there is a recommendation from all parties to approve the full allotment on that. Okay. Project number 18. This is the last project we'll look at that has this match available. This is a federal match for the Green Bike Federal Grant Program. It pretty much is looking at the green bikes, doing some, 60,000 goes towards the match, and then the other funds go towards infrastructure that needs to be replaced. Okay, let's look at number 19. It's Livable Streets Program 2026.
Wait, raising hand.
Sorry.
Councilmember Young, sorry.
No worries. I'm back on 18. Can we go back?
Great.
So I just had like two questions related to the description on green bikes, because they're mentioning bike racks and the bike corral. Do we have a sense of where those are going to be located? Only because there are multiple other projects that aren't getting funded that we're also asking for bike racks. And I'm wondering if this is it takes care of it, or we still need to consider those other needs.
Is someone from transportation here that could answer that?
If not, it can be on the list for next time.
Hi, Council. Okay, I'm not sure that I fully understand the question. Are you asking what would the bike corral portion of the budget go towards?
I'm just curious the location of where that is and where the $20,000 for replacing 20-year-old bike racks, do we know where those are?
We do have an inventory of where the old bike racks are that need to be replaced. The bike corrals, I don't know if we have exact locations yet. Typically, they have gone in front of restaurants or pubs. Those are really popular locations.
Okay, I'm wondering if it just as a follow-up, if we could just understand at least where the location is related to the replacing of bike racks, and then if we don't have designed places for the corral, I'm wondering if it might be possible to look at some of the other proposals that we're asking for bike racks to see if there's natural overlap, oh yeah, we could have a corral there.
Yeah, sure. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other items on 18? Great. Let's look at number 19. This is the Livable Streets Program. This includes traffic calming improvements, and it was recommended to be fully funded.
Can I ask, outside of this, not at all right now, can we get council staff to help us just with understanding what things are comprehended on livable streets, complete streets, and what things are just regular street maintenance? If I could have like a chart, like an at a glance that I could put on the wall of my cubicle, it would be one of the most helpful tools of my life. And Vision Zero would be great to have in there too.
Yeah, I will send that out.
Councilmember Pui.
So this item, obviously, we've been doing it based on data. We did the assessment on the street, on the areas that had the most accidents across the city, and we're sort of trying to get around that based on the data, which I appreciate, instead of trying to fund individual projects from neighbors. Now, jumping to 41, Glendale traffic calming, I know this might be unusual, but this is a project that the city funded in the years past the study. And the study concluded with it spewed some recommendations for improvements to make probably one of the biggest schools in the West Side, safer for pedestrians. So I worried about that one because, I'm all about studying things, but I think everybody loves a shovel on the ground. So spreading ourselves through studying things, and there is a few of those in here, then we don't do the rest, which is the actual shovel on the ground. So I'm gonna flag that one for my colleagues here, that we already did the study. The study said we need to do X, Y, and Z. So my request for the administration will be, what does phase 1 cost? What does phase 2 cost? And if there is any, pieces that could be done of that project to start moving the needle in the right direction, and if they think that's appropriate. But if that, and the reason why I jumped from 19 Livable Streets program to 2026 is because I wonder if there is anything that is supported by data. Because again, if the data says that this is an area that needs the funding, is it being funded by the $2 million here, or partially funded, or it's in our discretion to move some of that around? I hope that made sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay, I have a note on that, and we'll follow up with the administration.
Thank you.
Great.
Made it easy for you, sorry.
Okay. Any other?
I'll wait to talk about transportation and streets later, because there's
You're not waiting.
sorry, you're right, I'm not late. You're right, there's 17 other applications that have the same thing.
Okay. Okay. Next.
Are there any other items like the one that Councilmember Pui pointed out that you would like to comment on specifically for us to look at on this particular item?
I mean, we're about to get to it, but the hawk light at Zenith Avenue has haunted me. And I intentionally went over there just to see it. They're not wrong.
Yeah. Great. Okay, we will get there. Let's look at number 20. This was a constituent application for curb, gutter, sidewalk, and a repavement. It's recommended for approval. Any comment, question?
I just want to make a comment related to curb replacement. Do we know how many applications had that repetitive request? 'Cause I know in my district we had one paired with sprinkler repair that fell under public lands, but I'm really curious how many other projects need just curb specifically.
I can get you an exact number, but there were 4 that had it in the title.
Okay. The only reason I ask is every year we seem to get the same applications for curb replacement. There seems to be very specific, hotspots or parcels that have massive curb erosion. And I'm just trying to figure out if those are applications that should have been separated instead of individually prioritized as projects versus trying to overcome the general maintenance of curb through CIP. Does that make sense?
I feel like this about a few things as we grow. I feel like this about traffic lights. Like, I feel like we should be projecting how many we need to add and rotate out. I don't understand how that's a capital improvement. At least maybe in a small city I understand, but I don't understand how us growing that stays. So there's a couple things that after we're done with this season, I would be really interested in looking at, like, is this CIP or is this something that should be ongoing maintenance for us?
Yeah. Just going to say this, we had the same discussion last year, and there's a few applications that are rotating that are now 7-8 years.
Yeah.
And so I know in my district we have one. I also recognize we're limited on CIP, but I just am curious, like, why wouldn't the department consider consolidating them instead of putting neighborhoods against each other?
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
I'm curious about that point too, Councilmember Petro. I mean, what is ongoing maintenance, right? Like, you know, I think that this is sort of like, the system is sort of created in a way that if people see something and they feel very strongly, they can submit it. And, you know, I have a curve that it's a little kind of messed up, but I'm not going to submit a CIP for it. And ultimately, we could be replacing all the curves across the city and repaving everything. I mean, it will be just overwhelming. And I don't know what the right answer is, and I don't know if anybody knows what the right answer is to our infrastructure, because it breaks and it changes everywhere, and we don't have ice everywhere either. So I'm curious about how we get around that, but I'm not sure there is a clear answer.
Inadvertently creating district-based Hunger Games, though, is not the strategy. So if we're doing that, I think we should be careful.
Councilmember Young?
Yes, thank you. So I'm very familiar with this particular project, so I would just throw a couple of additional notes for council members to consider. This has been a request that has come through in the 3 years that I have served on council. This isn't for an improvement. This is to get a curb and sidewalk. So it's not improving anything. There's nothing there. And this is being able to bring us up to like the city standard related to this particular property. So just a quick clarification for that. I support it. It's like I said, it's definitely gone through the rounds and kind of been an item on the list in terms of things that, you know, we need to address. So thank you.
Great. Next. Oh, Karen, Councilmember Romano, sorry.
I was just going to say, thank you, Councilmember Young. That helps me because I am also of the mindset that things like even livable streets are up in the same category. An alleyway, those are things that we should just have ongoing budget to continually replace as soon as we can, or an individual street. But that helps me understand that if something is deficient, that's a different category than just maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Item 21, this is what Councilmember Petro just mentioned, is that hawk light on the corner of Richmond and Zenith Avenue.
Okay.
I'll jump in. Yes, thank you. I appreciate this one's recommended for funding. I know you guys have heard from the constituents. We've been working with them for over a year now in terms of addressing this, and just noting that the key issue here is we were really looking at connecting a neighborhood to a local daycare across a very serious traffic way that is difficult to see because of the curb in the road, which isn't something that we're going to be able to fix. So thank you to those of you who have spoken for this. I appreciate it, and thank you to the process that was able to elevate this. I am grateful.
Okay.
Okay, project 22. This is for 3 sport court replacements. It was only partially funded, so I do believe it's just going to be 2 sport court replacements based on the recommendation here.
Okay.
Do we know which 2?
Public lands?
Hi, thanks for having me back. It is likely that the 630 would only fund full replacement of 1 court. However, we do have an ongoing partnership with an organization that may be able to help with the replacement of the Liberty Park court. So hopefully we would be able to do Liberty Park, given that we're able to partner with that local organization. And then we would likely move towards West Point basketball because it's in a worse condition, less playable than the Riverside Park tennis courts.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Great. 23, this is playground replacements. It was partially funded. We might want you back up here, Kat, if that's okay. It was proposed at 1.5.
I just, it says that we do 4 of the following playgrounds. I'd just like to throw Curtis Park's playground into that mix of whatever 10 parks that are there. Because I would like to add Curtis Park to the list of possible playgrounds to be replaced. It says 4 of the following playgrounds in alphabetical order will be selected based on asset conditions, accessibility, ADA, and they list a bunch of playgrounds, and I think I would just like to add Curtis Park to that mixture.
Would you like it on the list that is for sure recommended for funding, or this year or in the future?
I'll let them add it to that list, and they can decide if it's, it's in condition, it's do their assessment. Yeah, the top 4.
Great.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Does our Parks Department do some sort of, study around to check on them?
They probably
have
do.
Data?
They probably do, but I'm just asking that one.
No.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm just wondering if they have, I'm okay. You've been very gracious with all the things over the years. I'm just wondering if there is, if there is something that says that, also, it might need just a coat of paint, or it might need a full replacement. I just want to know if the administration has any information about on the status of all of the playgrounds across the city.
Would you like them to come up and answer that?
Mm-hmm. Come on up. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thanks. Just to clarify, that was just data on the condition of all of our citywide playgrounds. Was that the question? Yeah, we use Cartograph. It's like an overall condition index assessment that is based on data that's collected from our parks maintenance folks as they're doing park maintenance. And so it's based on a number of things like year of install, number of repairs, and just like apparent condition and how poor it is. And so we based this list on the lowest numbers for the overall condition index, and we kind of ground truth those with park maintenance as we make our decision, but we can definitely note to look at Curtis Park for sure.
And do you only look at whether a full replacement is needed or whether other maintenance could extend the life of the playground?
Yeah, general maintenance does extend the life. These ones are for full playground replacements that haven't been addressed in 20 to 25 years. Our repairs are all addressed with the annual operating budget from our parks districts.
Yes.
Sorry, and is that a report or something that we could share with the council from Cartograph on, for each playground, say in the city's inventory, what the current status is?
Yes, we have all of that data is available, and we can get you. I will just note that we are working on kind of updating the accuracy of our data, so take it kind of with a grain of salt. And we're doing that right now, but we can definitely get you that spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
And I would like to, make sure that this point hasn't get lost. You feel strongly, you represent the area, you know what we're talking about. So I would love to support that. Certainly don't want to hurt any major improvements for potential repair, but I would like to echo his concern.
Thank you.
Great.
I have a quick question.
Oh, Councilmember Young.
This is one of those that has reduced funding, and so I know the narrative said 4, but what is realistic with the 385,000? Is that one?
That is one, yes.
Okay, thank you.
24. So this is safety improvements to 600 East between 900 South and Liberty Park to the connection of Tune N Street to South Temple. It is a constituent application and is recommended for full funding.
Mr. Chair, just wanted to speak to this real quick. Yeah, thank you. This is a project that the community and specifically the Central City Transportation Committee has been working on aggressively for over a year. It's a natural pedestrian byway and connection to the 9 line. My understanding in talking with our transportation department as well, that this is a low cost addition that would bring in a lot of safety to a place in our city, a neighborhood really that's seeing an increase of traffic, congestion, growth, and this really could be vital to creating really safe passages for transit users and other multimodalities. So supportive of it. Just wanted to provide that context.
Great, thank you. So we're going to skip over the ones that were not recommended for funding to project number 28.
Can I make a comment on project 25? I just want to highlight it. This is the 8th year this application has come through. So it precedes my time on the council, certainly. But I just want to mention on this project, I'm pretty frustrated. There's been 2 directors now that I've gotten to work with where the curb on the 12th East medians is, I'm told, is going to be prioritized, is not. And so the constituencies believe that CIP is the proper process for maintenance. So I just want to highlight this again. This is a larger project proposal, but really what's happening is there's curb erosion where vehicles are now using these medians as parking. And as a city, we haven't addressed this in District 4. This is considered green space by public lands definition. So this median is green space for this neighborhood. So I'm just a little frustrated that it keeps coming through to CIP when it really shouldn't be, and it isn't being addressed through CIP because it's not being prioritized by the department. So I just want to mention that it is quite frustrating to have this application continually be revised and worked through. My understanding is that the community has brought this up when they apply, and they're being told to continually apply. So I want to understand, is this maintenance or is this a project we're trying to address through CIP?
Is this different from number 20? I mean, I see that this one seems more comprehensive. There's tree planting and everything. And this one specifies 300 to 400 south and then 500 south, but it's 1,200 east medians. What am I missing?
I think that's a question the department could help us understand a little bit more. But, in terms of the curb, my understanding is right now there's a 2-inch curb, or what's the remnants of it. And what's being proposed is if I'm not mistaken, a 6-inch curb.
Is
There's sprinkler repair, beautification, there's obviously more.
No, number 20 is farther south on 1,200.
those are
Okay,
different
thank you. That's the
parts of the
clarification I was asking for. So this is a different area of 1,200. Maybe we should do a postmortem to find out why this one got so easily funded and that one did. Maybe the scope of this one is
I just want to state this, the scope keeps getting larger for the 12th East medians. It started as an application for just the curbs. And I think what's happening is the constituent application, when they come back to get feedback, they're being told to expand scope so that it's a competitive application. So I think the constituency believes that by expanding scope, they're incentivizing the CIP board, the mayor's office, and ourselves to consider funding a project when this is really a project that's trying to overcome maintenance.
Mr. Chair, quickly.
Yes, we have interviewers here, but go ahead.
Well, I think we should ask the administration for a breakdown on the different improvements and see if there is an opportunity here for some of this. This is considered, green space. It's maintained by public lands as basically a park. So I think that would be very important information for us to make a decision about it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, this is the last comment.
I know.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the push for green space and the curb on 12th East, but if you look at the big picture here, we have, I'm going to say this because I counted them all up, 17 projects here that have just been written on CIP for either street safety, redoing the whole street, Texas Street, Nevada Street. You can't drive down there. It's just basically gravel streets. Big pressures, this street here, and maybe they're not doing the curb here because they actually need to do the whole street, and they're not going to just do the curb because then they're going to have to redo the curb when they do the rest of the street. So there's a lot of variables here and priorities. and we need streets repaired across the street. And we talked about that earlier, $250 million at least to pay for all the street reconstructions just to get them back to a national standard. So there's a lot of here. So yes, we need to go through that, but I think it's a separate discussion at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Young, I saw that you had your hand up earlier, and I'm sorry. So this is for real the last comment.
Yep, this is a future-facing request. I'm just hoping we can get a breakdown of the costs related to Project 27, like how much for design, how much for planning, how much for that. So future-facing, don't need it right now. Thank you.
If there are other of those, you could any council member could let Kate know, and we can follow up before the August 12th meeting.
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, thanks, Kate.
Next up is 28.
Oh, no, we're good.
Sorry.
We're done.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Okay. For our board appointments, we've got Sarah Vaughn for the library board. Is Sarah present? Oh, hi.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We're great, thanks. So thank you for being here. This is your opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in serving on the library board, and what area of the city you're representing, if you're comfortable sharing that. So go right ahead.
So yeah, my name's Sarah Vaughn. I live in Rose Park. I've lived in that part of the city since 2017. I am a litigator in the city, a lawyer, I guess. And for the last several years, I've been trying to get more involved in the community, joining boards, and I have 2 small kids, and we go to the Marmalade branch of the library, and we love it there. And I love seeing the social services that they provide too, and it's just such a great community space. So as I thought about what I wanted to do moving forward, I thought the library would be a great spot to get more involved in more aspects of the community. It's an area me and my kids love, and so I thought it would be enjoyable. Do something good and have a good time at the same time.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Sarah? Yes, Councilmember Petro.
Thanks for being willing to volunteer your time to represent District 1 so well. It looks like we're neighbors, so hi, neighbor.
Hi.
But thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this is for Sarah and all of our board applicants. We will place your name on the agenda for our formal meeting on our consent agenda. You need not be present to win, but we would love to have you join the meeting if you'd like to be there, but you definitely don't need to be there. So thank you, and we appreciate you, your service to Salt Lake City.
When is that consent meeting?
Oh, our meeting is at 7, and the consent agenda is just at the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. The next is Margaret Neville. Come on down. Great. Have a seat, speak into the microphone, and turn it on, please. You just need to turn your mic on, though. Is it green?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Margaret Neville. I used to be in Dan's district, but you guys messed with the lines. And I think I'm in Amy's now. I have been passionate about reading my entire life. Went to my first experience with the Salt Lake City Library System was with Bookmobile, and that was a long time ago. Anyway, the last year I have been volunteering in a school down in Sarah's neighborhood, Guadalupe, and I got really interested in what the city library system could be doing with what I perceive to be as an underserved community, and not because anybody's doing anything they shouldn't. The library has a lot of really terrific programs, but I'm looking at it from the other side and thinking maybe that's something I could do. I'm not currently employed, so I'm volunteering, reading a lot actually, like to read still, so a lot of experience with books and kids, and boards too.
Great.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anyone for Margaret?
Sure.
Wait a minute.
Oh, Sarah, you go.
No, thank you. I am her council member.
Sarah, go ahead.
Margaret, it's great to have you here. Super excited to have you joining. I just want to call out that Margaret has an incredible background, not just in the things she shared today, but also spending time with King's English Bookshop, volunteering in the local schools, and having that type of knowledge and experience related to the service, I just think is incredible. So thank you. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Councilmember Young. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes, just one question for Margaret. What book do you recommend we read?
Actually, Dan, I almost brought you a copy, but I thought it would look like bribery, so I didn't do it. But John Lewis's new book, have you looked at it by any chance? I can't even think of the name of it. It's about government employees, federal employees. He and several other authors have combined their talents to focus on an individual past employee of the federal government. And he's coming at it from the point of view that people that work for government are people that want to serve. They want to do the best they can. And these are people with outstanding talents and histories. One of my favorite chapters was the gentleman who figured out how to prevent the ceilings of coal mines from falling on people. And before they figured this out, in a 10-year period, up to 50,000 people would die in a mine. Now think about that number. How many fathers, sons, brothers, and a few women to boot? And of course, the minute they fired him, the federal agencies that are monitoring that stuff are backing off. It's fascinating.
Thank you. And I asked that question because if you write Margaret an email, the last question she puts on her email is, "What book are you reading?" And sometimes I have to delay my response because I got to find a book. It's not my coloring book. So thank you.
Yeah, that is actually one of my strengths. If you want to if you want a book, a suggestion for a book, please ask. I'm happy to help.
Just to highlight stories that haven't been told.
Right.
We didn't mess up with the lines. It was an independent commission. We did it right. We're not like other layers of government. We actually selected an independent commission to suggest the redistricting lines that are required by law, and they suggested the lines. So I'm sad that some of you were switched council members, but you have some very good ones. So very excited to have you join our city.
I do. I've always been aware that the people that work for me as a taxpayer and a citizen are doing the best job they can. And I applaud that every day, at least when I think about it. I do have some things I want to talk to you about 19th East, so if somebody wants to, since you're talking about road projects.
Well, thank you. We're happy to hear those conversations offline. And thank you so much for your service to Salt Lake City.
Thanks, Chris.
Next is Transportation Advisory Board, Solomon Broomba. Is Solomon here?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I work up at the University of Utah. I'm also a Mill Creek resident, so I'm just outside of District 7, used to be, part of Salt Lake, but I'm taking over for John Close. He's been on the Transportation Advisory Board committee for a while, and I work in transportation. I work for commuter services. If you know what that is at the University of Utah, I'm sorry, but we do more than just write tickets. My role at Commuter Services is I'm the TDM program administrator. So TDM is Transportation Demand Management. My whole goal is to move people to the university more efficiently. And ultimately that means with fewer vehicle trips. And one of the things I've known for a long time and I've worked slowly on is creating more connections with our partner, with our, the city, the surrounding neighborhoods. And I feel like being on this board would give me an opportunity to do that even better.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Solomon? All right. Thank you so much for your service to Salt Lake City. We appreciate it. Okay, council members, that brings us to the standing items in our agenda, report from the chair and vice chair. Lehu is going to say my announcement.
This?
Yeah.
Impact Transit and Community Conference for the year is open for registration. If council members are interested in attending, please let staff know. It is one of the pre-approved conventions that is outlined in the council policy.
For those of us up for election, that falls in the time where we shouldn't be traveling, correct?
That is correct. Thank you for that note. Yep.
That wasn't my announcement. Mine was who wants to be on the subcommittee. Oh, never mind. Yeah, my announcement's coming in August, so get excited for that. Kate, anything else?
No.
All right. Just the anticipation now. All right, that concludes our work session. We will, what? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I will entertain, we do have an agenda item for a closed session for strategies to discuss the purchase, exchange, and lease of real property and attorney-client matters. So,
will there also be a disposition of property as well, or no? Is that just acquisition?
yes, sorry, I thought I said both.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that the council will enter in closed session for the purpose of strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, and lease of real property and attorney-client matters.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Pui, a second from Councilmember Lopez Chavez.
Is there also to be discussion about disposition of any property, or is it only acquisition, I guess?
No, he said disposition.
You said, okay, sorry, I must have missed that. Thank
You're
you.
totally good.
Let me restate it. We consider a motion to strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, disposition, lease of real property and attorney-client matters.
And we've got lease in there.
Thank you.
Motion from Councilmember Pui, second from Councilmember Lopez Chavez. We'll go ahead and roll call this. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Lopez Chavez.
Aye.
Pui.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Young.
Aye.
Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yay. Take that. There's a new way to say yes. And
You
it's yay.
bougie attorney.
All right. Thank you. We'll be in closed session.